Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. Lauren, are you with us? It looks like you still weren't able to sign in. You were with us a moment ago. Anyways, we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us. This is our second Bicycle Climate Action Team meeting, leading into the April 7th capital budget retreat at the city. That's the big focus topic that is on our radar. And it looks like we even have a couple others joining us. Lauren, welcome. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, very nice. Good. And Stefan, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And gosh, Daniel, that brings us up. Okay, we can have up to 10. Okay, that's right. Awesome. This is great. We're trying this new platform that I'm very familiar with, but I haven't used this in a minute, but this is StreamYard. Anyways, thank you all so much for being here. We have a very exciting meeting ahead of us, a lot of great conversation, discussions, and presentations that we're going to be diving into and planning leading into that April 7th budget retreat. Maybe what we can do really quickly, given that I really want to dive into the information, we can go around the circle really quick, introduce yourself. If you're here on behalf of any groups or if you're involved with any groups that are relevant to this conversation, please mention so. And maybe one funny bicycle related, I don't know. I was going to say story, but stories can take too long. Your favorite type of bicycle and why? So let's have Tyler. You want to go first? You want to introduce yourself and then your favorite bicycle and why?
Name is Tyler Denham. I'm here just representing myself. Favorite bicycle is hard. So I remember most of my childhood, I rode some kind of cheap mountain bike. I can't remember the brand name, but if I saw that kind of bike again, I'd immediately recognize it. And I've got a bunch of nostalgia tied up with that bike from my childhood. So whatever that kind of bike was, that would be my favorite.
I like that. And going with that theme, let's do our first bicycle, whatever your first bicycle was. I like that. Anthony, you want to go next? Oh, you are muted, my friend. Still muted.
Wrong button. Okay. My name is Anthony Quintilier. I'm a longtime board member of Flagstaff Biking Organization. And my first bicycle was a Schwinn Stingray frame. My dad got out of the trash and we built up eventually to be a BMX bike at the very cutting edge of BMX back in the olden days.
Nice. What year was that?
Oh gosh, I don't know, like 74 or something, 1974.
Wow.
75.
Got a few of those early BMXs. Those are nice. Daniel.
This was not a BMX bike. I want to be clear. We made it into a BMX. It was a Stingray frame, like a 20-inch Stingray frame.
Oh heck yeah, that's great.
Oh man, that brings back some memories. Well, I think the first significant bike that I probably ever had was I was always in the woods growing up, so I found this old bike, kind of this like in parts, and lo and behold, it actually ended up being a really top of the line mongoose back in like the 80s. Now that bike would probably be worth like $50, but that was pretty top notch back then, and that was my inception into riding BMX style bikes, or so that was my first ever bike. Besides the one with the training wheels, I don't remember that one very much.
Totally. And Daniel, did you mention that you're here on behalf of NASCA?
Yeah, I'm here on behalf of NASCA, the regional field organizer. I left that part out. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Daniel. Anika, are you able to unmute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Anika. I'm here on behalf of myself, though I am a part of Falls Environmental Coalition and Flagstaff Youth Climate Alliance. And my first bike was really tiny. because my mom taught me to ride a bike when I was 3. The main thing I remember about it is that it had this little squeaky pig horn thing on it.
Heck yeah. Welcome, Anika. Thanks for joining us. Lauren.
Hey, I'm Lauren. Here representing myself and just biking around, and I know Anthony a little bit. And let's see, the first bike was, there's a picture of me with my tricycle. So it was my dad got it secondhand, and then he repainted it like yellow, blue, and red. So it's a pretty fun picture. Yeah, but definitely the Target special bike was my college first bike. So I hear you, Tyler.
Thank you for sharing. Stefan.
Well, so my favorite bike is the one I have right now. I got it when I was a grad student, and it's this is before Mongoose went the Schwinn route of being sold by Sears. They were something at the beginning, and this is a chromoly frame bike. It's still a wonderful bike. I've done all kinds of things on it over the 500 years since then. That's kind of the way I am. I like things that last. And
That's great.
I work to make them last.
And Stefan, you're here on behalf of NASCA as well, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm here on behalf of me. I want to be part of the Bike Cat, but yeah, I do serve as on the board of directors of NASCA.
That's great. Thank you for joining us. And then, my name is Adam. I think most of you know me. And folks who are tuning in live, feel free to comment in the comments section and engage throughout this conversation. We definitely want to have you participate however you can. So if you want to comment your first or favorite bike, I'd love to hear from you all who are tuning in. But my first bike was a Rolls-Royce BMX Target Special. Bought it out of my own money that I saved up. I think it was a couple $100. Had the whole, pegs and all, and I was part of like a BMX club. It was fun, and definitely, brings back a lot of memories. But again, thank you all so much for joining us. We have a lot to discuss, so let's jump right in. Anthony's going to kick off the conversation with a short presentation and discussion about Flagstaff Biking Organization. As this bike climate action team gets going, we definitely need to work with our partners and recognize those who have been doing this work for decades in Northern Arizona. And Flagstaff Biking Organization is a local nonprofit, and I'm proud to be a board member with the organization and have worked closely with Anthony and others part of FBO for years. But FBO does great work in our community, and both for trails and advocacy and commuter routes and safety, everything bicycle related. And I want to say it's going on 25 years. But I'll go ahead and pass the mic to Anthony and let him introduce the agency and talk a little bit about what they do and what they're doing.
Well, we are an NGO, so not an agency, but an organization. But we're in our 21st year, actually, but 2 decades. Am I able to share stuff from my screen? How do I do that?
Yes,
present?
At the bottom, there should be like a present button. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And Timothy, welcome. Thank you for joining us, Tim. Can you hear us?
Oh, I might be having trouble with the security stuff here. Hang on.
Okay, you should have permission or the ability to present.
On this machine. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. Take your time. Let me see if I can engage Tim.
Let me see.
Hey. Tim, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Let's see.
Oh,
this works. Okay, are you able to see this?
Yes. 1 second. Okay, you're up.
Okay, so this is our website.
Zoom in just a little bit. Anthony, zoom in just a little bit.
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Zoom in just a little bit if you can.
There's no zoom in.
Like Command plus maybe on your computer.
that?
Yeah, okay, a little
Do you
too
want me
much,
to
but
do this?
that's good.
Okay.
Perfect.
I was having some issues before with that, seeming to slow down my machine. So this is our website, and I bring this up because I want to point out, if you get a chance, it's just flagstaffbiking.org, and you can get some idea of some of our history in advocacy and public communication with government agencies on our documents page, which is on the top here. You can see my cursor there. In a particular city of Flagstaff, probably more than anything, but Coconino County, we've submitted quite a few letters over the years on important issues regarding bicycle safety, bicycle advocacy, and you can kind of get our view, our take on bicycling as it relates to our community in a sort of policy fashion here. So please take some time to look at that later. Also, we have, well, let me go through that a little bit, I guess. So we've been involved in commenting or involved with trails and bike safety and bike access since 2002 or 3. And we started off by putting on the first Flagstaff Bike to Work Week, which eventually became Bike to Work and School Week, and is now Flagstaff Bike Month. Our mission is promoting bicycling as a safe and attractive means of transportation and recreation in northern Arizona. And I'm going to come back here for a little while. So it's a pretty open mission, but the goal is to basically get people riding bikes. And our approach has been typically to treat bicycling as an inclusive pursuit. It's nonpartisan. And in order to encourage people to ride, we can put on all the events in the world, but if we don't have good infrastructure and safe places people feel safe to ride, as well as that are safe to ride, people aren't going to ride. So we have advocated for that infrastructure over the years in various different ways, in order to help provide a place for people to ride. Additionally, we've done a lot of stuff trying to teach both kids and adults. So we help to get, and the current status on this is a little open-ended. It sort of comes and goes, but we help to get a couple of League of American Bicyclists certified instructors, or a couple of Flagstaff Police Department officers certified as league instructors so that they could run the bicycle diversion program that was put in place several years ago. So basically, if you're cited for a traffic violation on your bicycle by the police department, you can attend this class and avoid paying the fine. We also, at one point, basically saved the local Safe Kids bicycling program. We can't take a lot of credit for what's been going on with it recently, although we do help a little bit here and there. But Kim Austin with the Coconino County Health Services District has taken that over. I'm not sure what she's doing with rodeos these days. A lot of that was funded by the Safe Routes grant funding, which went away, but I think it might be coming back. And Kim has done quite a bit through her job with Safe Kids and the county. We work with Kim quite a bit on Bike Month and other things. So she took that over eventually. Heather before her took that on, and she's still at the Health Services District. But so we help with that and help build that training program for kids in school, teaching them how to ride safely in traffic, how to signal and be aware of their surroundings and things like that. So those are things that we've done to reach out to cyclists and teach cyclists. But we've also advocated quite a bit on behalf of cyclists with certainly with the city. And like I said, please check out our documents page. You can see the various letters and our positions that we've taken with the city and infrastructure and issues in the past. We've done things as small as reaching out to the police department when we found out that somebody had been cut off in traffic and cited for something that they were allowed to do, and gotten tickets reversed. So, which is always a great thing to find out. Oh yeah, well, that officer got talked to and now the ticket's reversed, and the guy who broke his arm because he got cut off in traffic by a vehicle and he had the right of way is now going to be able to actually make a claim on his own insurance, if not get some out of the driver's insurance. So actually get something out of the driver's insurance. So we've done small things like that over the years, just trying to advocate on behalf of certain individuals when they come to us and approach us. Our biggest ongoing piece of advocacy work, though, is the promotion of previously Bike to Work and School Week, which is now Bike Month. That's coming up in May this year, the 1st through the 31st. And we put on several events throughout the month. We have a kickoff ride with the City Hall folks, typically some members from council and the mayor. There's a proclamation made by the city recognizing Bike to Work Week previously, now Bike a Month. And we ride around downtown a little bit and come back. We typically at that event, we every year give a brick at Heritage Square to some deserving individual who's worked on behalf of advocacy, bicycling advocacy in town. And then we put on our what we call our Bike Bazaar, which is a bike swap at Heritage Square. We do a big parade around downtown. A lot of people come in costumes. We try to get folks from local governments to come out and some nonprofits to talk about what they're doing with bicycling. We work with Kim at the Health Services District, who I mentioned previously, to put on a thing that we call a Kiddical Mass Ride. Any kid in town is invited, typically try to get some parents. There's usually police support. We ride around. It's been from, I'm going to forget the name of the school, but it's the school on Fort Valley Road.
Is it Sequest?
So one on the right-hand side on the flat there. Yeah.
Sequest.
So from Sequest, we ride around several blocks and come back there and then serve the kids all ice cream, and that's a good time. We put on
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
We put on a bike to beer thing at the end of the event in the past. We should probably bring that one back now that COVID's over. But we'll put on things like that. But the biggest part of this event is that we get a whole bunch of raffle prizes donated by local businesses. And throughout the month, you can ride. You log your commutes on our website. It's free. And then every time you log, you've got essentially another ticket in the raffle pile. And they're good raffle prizes. They have to be at least $20 value. Then at the end of each week, we raffle off a bunch of stuff. And then at the end of the month, we raffle off bigger stuff. That event, one thing that I think often goes unrecognized, although it's a great thing in the fact that we're reaching out to people to try out riding their bikes instead of driving, it's over the years led to numbers that we give to Martin Ince, say, look, we got this many people riding their bikes in this time frame. And it demonstrates to city leadership that there is demand for bicycle infrastructure in the town and that Flagstaff is a cycling town. So those numbers there, that's something quantitative, but qualitatively, the fact that this event has been going on for every year for the past, well, COVID year, we'll count that one out, 2019, I guess it was. No, 2020, that was the first year we didn't actually do anything. But if you count that one out, this will be our 20th year.
Wow.
So that that's helped establish that bicycling is a part of the culture in Flagstaff. And that's helped, I think, drive a lot of things in a general way with the city and the county when they're making policy decisions about infrastructure and bicycling and incidentally pedestrians infrastructure as well. So just that tenacity with this event, I think, has contributed in this general sense to making Flagstaff cycling a part of what Flagstaff is. So you wanted to say something before, Adam? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to add, as part of that Sequest ride, I think FBO this year is going to be trying to reach one of the schools, perhaps some men's, one of the schools in Sunnyside.
Yeah, Kim is reaching out to some other schools, and we've reached out to various schools over the years. It's an always evolving thing. It's to some degree limited by the amount of bandwidth that we have and the number of people that we have, but it's mostly limited by buy-in from any given school, and that's been the biggest challenge. If we don't have a champion of anything we want to do with a school within the school infrastructure, either a senior teacher or an administrator at the school, it's virtually impossible. They always have more to do and than they can deal with. And then we come in and we're like, hey, we want to get kids to ride around on their bikes and eat ice cream at your school. And they're like, it's the end of this year and we have these finals. And so,
Yeah.
finding those champions is always a tough part. But Kim Austin is reaching out, and we may try to expand to a school on the other side of town this year. And we're always open to things like that. It's always just a matter of Adam will tell you that in our meetings, the challenge is if you have a good idea, you should come ready to do it, because
right.
You can't just go, hey, you know what you guys should do? It's like, no. We're all doing a lot. We're trying to keep up. And yeah. So
That's
anyway,
great.
hopefully we can add that, as Adam was saying.
Thank you, Anthony. Did you have more to present on, or should we open it up to questions?
Just real quick, I wanted to mention that we also do a lot of mountain biking advocacy. And in Flagstaff, we find culturally there's a lot of overlap. In fact, our bike challenge, or bike challenge, we call it, that's where you can log your ride and get a raffle ticket towards winning these raffle prizes. A couple of years ago, we decided to incorporate, you could put in your mountain bike rides, and not just because people could go mountain biking and then put it in, but a lot of people mountain bike to work. And we would want to encourage people to try that too, because there's a lot of opportunity to ride single track to work. So we stopped, it was before, really bike to work and errands. Now it's just log any bike ride you do during that time and that'll count. We do quite a bit of advocacy on behalf of mountain bike access to trails in the National Forest. We built the Fort Tuttle Bike Park in partnership with Coconino County Parks and Rec, but we got most of the grant money for that and implemented that, hired the contractors to build it.
Well, and when you say you got most of the grant money, you wrote the grants and did all the legwork and all the, I don't know, I find writing really intimidating. So it's the volunteering that's really fun, but the writing aspect, that's what most people don't do. So I don't know. I toot your horn for that one.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. We did write most of the grants. There was a grant that the county had to apply for. There was a big piece of that puzzle. They had, I think at least half of that grant went to build the new toilets that are out there, which is awesome. But that the county, because they were a government, had to apply for this one particular grant. But most of the rest of the grants we wrote for and were awarded and administered. And the writing sometimes is easier than the administering, honestly, especially with state parks. So we do a lot of that kind of stuff too. And then an up and coming issue, and I think there's a lot of, I think any climate group needs to be really aware of this and on board with this. We have for some time advocated on behalf of e-bikes, especially on the city FUT system. And we're now going to be advocating in a measured way for e-bikes on some mountain bike trails as appropriate. But specifically with regards to the FUTS trail system and within city infrastructure, one of the biggest challenges, I sold bicycles for 25 years of my life. And the biggest challenge with keeping people engaged in riding bikes is the fact that you have to pedal them up hills and into the wind. And so e-bikes help really mitigate some of that. And they definitely are a infinitesimally smaller footprint than a motor vehicle. So I've been somewhat dismayed by some of the pushback from some city council members on e-bike access to some of the FUT system. And frankly, when that particular individuals gone from the council, we're going to reapproach them about opening up the rest of the FUTS trail system to class 1 and 2 e-bikes. But I think that's a huge, having been a cyclist for so long and been so engaged with cycling and seeing the challenges and the arguments that an individual will make against themselves riding, not against cycling or against bike infrastructure or any of those things, but why won't I ride? I think one of the biggest challenges is it's too hard for me to do on a daily basis, and e-bikes fix all of those problems, except the expensive part. That'll probably come down over time. But so that's something that we're pretty strong advocates for, and we're really at the table during those discussions with council a few years ago here regarding the FUTS trail. Mountain bike thing, we're not quite so militant about, because there's definitely some give and take there, and there's some differing opinions within the bicycling community. But definitely from a commuter standpoint, I think e-bikes are a pretty phenomenal addition to the options for people transitioning away from using motor vehicles as much as they do and into using bicycles much more frequently. So that's something that definitely I hadn't brought up earlier, but maybe I'm a little out of context, but that's something we've been advocating for, and something you guys should be talking about for sure. So
yeah, e-bikes are really changing the game. Anthony, did you have more? Go ahead, Stefan.
Just real quick, Daniel texted and said he had to jet to a 5:30 thing, and Sue Rose just texted. She wished she could be here, but she's dealing with major flooding at her house, and I can relate. So if I'm looking kind of droopy, it's because I've got up at 3:30 this morning and hauled water until 6:30 this morning, when I could go buy a sump pump, and I've been dealing with water in the basement all day. So I'm feeling droopy. Sorry.
Oh, it's all good.
So yeah, I'm up for any questions, and then I have a small request when we're done with that. So
anyone have a question?
I'm curious. I'm curious. What are the typical objections to e-bikes on FUTS trails and those other areas we're talking about?
You want the really frank answer, or it's new and scary and different. There's a level of puritanism that's always infiltrated any sport, and particularly bicycling. So there's a bit of, the idea of earning your turns that comes from skiing, right? There's that mentality. There's also this fear that they're basically little motorcycles, and so the FUTS trail will turn into this super highway of people doing 35 on e-bikes. But if you know anything about class 1 and class 2 e-bikes, they're power limited at 20 miles per hour, and they don't just go 20 miles per hour all the time. They do really, by design and by deliberate, I have to hand it to the bike industry, there was a lot of intent behind how e-bikes were developed through the bicycling industry. So the intent was that they would basically emulate the types of speeds that a bicycle would operate at. But people anybody who's a purist about any of this stuff, they think they're just going to be people whipping up and down the FUTS trail at 35 miles an hour and running little old ladies off the trail, and making the trail unusable by anyone else. And it's just not the case. So you get unwarranted, unfounded concerns about the new and different thing, like you would with any new and different thing. Not a skier, but I just saw an old clip about snowboards from whenever it was, the early 80s, and how they were just going to destroy skiing for everybody at the resort, and that didn't happen. So it's that type of mentality, and so Mark Jensen said to me before this was originally going to go to council several years ago, when he said, I wish we were holding off on this for 3 or 4 years, because nobody would care but now people have opinions, and he's fundamentally right. Maybe not 3 or 4 years, but like 5 or 10 years, nobody's going to worry about whether or not their e-bikes are going to ruin the Futz Trail. It's just going to be another modality, I think. So that's my take. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's what it sure feels like.
Not to. Oh, go ahead, Stefan.
Just a curiosity. About how many members would you say that FBO has, Anthony?
So there was a time when we were vigilant about trying to elicit annual membership renewals, and we technically don't have members. We have supporters because members get to vote on boards and things like that, right? So we've not been able to get anybody engaged to enlist people on an annual basis to give us money every year. We also have quite a few business supporters. We're program and effort based. So if like the Trails program, we have a sponsorship program for that, and every year we go out and seek sponsorship. 2 years ago, we changed it dramatically. At one point, it was $250 would buy you a sponsorship for a day, and that was your business's trail day. We did 8 or 13 of these things a year, depending. We changed some years. But a few years ago, or just last year, the Mount Eldon Dry Lake Hills Recreation Planning Project was signed, which is this big deal. We all get to finally fix up the trail system in the Dry Lake Hills, delete some old stuff that was user created, build some other stuff that's not near spotted owls and that kind of thing. And so we have a mission now to try to fundraise to hire trail crews to build some of these trails. And so we upped the sponsorship levels for those pretty dramatically, and we got many more sponsors. So we raised a substantial amount of money. So that's one way that people support FBO. We get a lot of people who donate raffle prizes for Bike Month. Those could be as one $20 pair of socks, or it could be, people have donated a complete new bicycle. Shops have donated a complete new bicycle. We've had the Flagstaff Extreme donate like a pass for 6 people for the day out there at the ropes course. So some bigger ticket things. And we have, we may be targeting a specific trail project, and we'll be fundraising for that. So we're going to ask for money for that. So there's financial support. We try to target to specific things. We're all volunteers. So our overhead and our is very low. We pay for website hosting. We pay for insurance and things like that. But our website is maintained for free, and our bookkeeping is done for free by volunteers. So we don't have a lot of that kind of stuff. But when we do have a project, then we go out and we seek support. So that makes it very difficult to count how many people we've had. When we did have paid members, we had, I think, around 300, something like that. At this point, if I went back and counted, okay, well, this business gave us a bunch of money, we're gonna count that as one, and then this guy gave us $20, we'll count that as one, and this woman makes, these baskets that we raffled off during Bike Month, so I count that as one. We probably have around 300. We get similar numbers. I just have to sit down. We don't really count anymore. Our email list is, I have to ask my wife, but I think we're well over 2,000, 3,000 folks on our email list. We've got, I was just looking at this the other day, but one second, I'll be right back. Hang on. We have 4,900 followers on Facebook. I think a couple thousand on Instagram. We just started a TikTok thing, so we might have like 3 by there now. I don't think we've done Twitter. So yeah, I mean, those are the kinds of numbers that we have. But when they were gonna trade off most of the Forest Service surrounding Flagstaff for John McCain was going to try to midnight deal that, and we managed to help fill City Hall with a bunch of other people, other organizations, right? So a lot of people pay attention to us, and when we try to fundraise, we tend to be successful.
Not to hurry us too much, but just knowing that we have a lot more to discuss tonight. Anthony, you want to mention your closing comments that you mentioned?
Sure. So two things, I guess. One thing, when it makes sense, when we're trying to talk to city council or county supervisors, there's a thing right now that Adam and I have been talking about. We're going to try to push the county to try to have analogous planning, if not an actual position, to what Martin Ince does, right, for at least their metro areas and to Flagstaff, so that there's a little synchronicity there. But where it makes sense, I think we should definitely be trying to work together and sort of tag teaming these agencies to message them. Your guys' slant is definitely going to be more towards, obviously, the climate messaging and stuff. And ours is going to be more towards access for bicycles and safety for bicyclists and such. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to partner in messaging and make sure that we're all on the same page on the types of things that we're trying to get local governments to do. The other thing is this: it's always I was once riding home during Bike Month from my job, and there was this guy riding down the street, and I kind of recognized him. We were both riding down the Route 66 bike path, and I said, "Hey, did you log your commute today?" And he's like, yeah, no, I ride every day. I'm above all that." Was sort of his take. And I was like, well, if you ride every day, there's even more to be gained by logging your commute. Not that you get raffle prizes, whatever, but that your number counts for your own sake even more, that we would maybe have bicycling specific traffic lights or whatever. If we could push these different things to get the infrastructure that makes it better to ride. And I understand, as a bicycle messenger in San Francisco and New York for 6 years, I don't need that crap. I can ride in any traffic. I don't care. But it's nicer if there's a nice path, right? Like, it's nicer if there's a bike lane sometimes. So I find sometimes that the folks most engaged, and I'm not making any assumptions about any of you folks, but sometimes the folks most engaged are less willing to participate in that frivolous thing, logging my commute, or whatever. So I would love it if you guys could help us get that messaging out about Bike Month in particular, and about people logging in, because, man, if those numbers, we typically get, I think, several hundred unique individuals every year, 300 or 400 throughout the month or the week. But if that could be 1,000, because people actually spent 30 seconds logging their commute because literally, I know it's more than the 300 or 400 that are logging their rides, right? There's way more people, and especially during that month or during Bike to Breakfast. That's one of our biggest events. And if we could count those unique individuals as being 1,000 throughout that month that actually logged, those numbers speak volumes to decision makers and to folks in administration of governments. So if you guys can help us getting that word out and just sharing generally some of our stuff before and during Bike Month, I'm pretty sure, Adam and I are on a quorum, but I'm pretty sure we can give you guys a free table at the Bike Swap in the Bike Bazaar, if you guys want to do an exhibit there. But just help getting the messaging out for that event for us. We get nothing out of it other than getting the word about bicycling out more. So anything you guys can help with us on Bike Month in particular, but generally let's try to work together otherwise.
Stefan.
Yeah, so the fellow who had to leave, Daniel Irwin, is the guy who does a lot of our outreach stuff. He sends out the newsletters for the whole region. He sends one to the Flagstaff group, Sedona group.
I'm sorry, Stefan, I can't hear you. Like you're all broken up. I don't know if other people can. But...
You're coming through clear on my end. I wonder if it's on your end, Anthony. But maybe try again, Stefan.
Okay, try that.
Try to enunciate.
Okay, that's better. Try that.
So Daniel Irwin is the one who puts stuff on our web calendar, and he gets the word out through the newsletters that come out about the middle of the month for Flagstaff. he's also responsible for Prescott and Verde Valley, Cottonwood, and Sedona. And I wanted to mention too, so NASCA is made up of a lot of volunteers and many different CATs, climate action teams. And so each CAT has their own focus. And, I keep trying to tell Adam, yeah, it's not just bike safety. Let's put a little thing about climate in there. But, so his primary focus isn't necessarily climate. And each CAT is a little bit different. But together, all the different community of NASCA keeps climate in the community's thinking. But anyway, I just wanted to say the cats are sort of independent. So Adam isn't necessarily just climate focused. But we get him to put a little bit of climate messaging in.
Yeah, no, on that note, I think, Stefan, that's a good point. Maybe we can have Daniel help get some of the messaging out about Bike Month.
Yeah.
Anthony, we'll talk more about that, but that's a good point. Anthony, any other closing comments before we move on to the next item?
Just so you know, I really was having a hard time hearing Stefan, so maybe Adam, you can share what his point was.
I'll fill you in.
It just broke.
Sorry. Well, let me just say real quick. I think biking and climate, from my thinking, are a very natural fit to each other. Right. So for NASCA to promote a biking event is not outside of our normal focus. It's part of what we would normally do. So we're very eager to have that relationship with FBO and co-sponsor events or just get the word out to our membership. We do have pretty large membership, and for us, we don't count it in terms of fundraising or anything like that. It's just if somebody has been active in some way that we know about with a NASCA event or signed a NASCA petition, we consider them to be active in some way. And we've got about 9,000 folks all together in Flagstaff and larger numbers across the whole region. So we do have a pretty good reach.
There's room for collaboration. It's exciting. This is great. Okay,
yeah,
well, I'd like to. Anthony, I'll fill you in too, but given the time and our lack of time, if folks do need to leave right at 6, please do. But we'll probably go over a little bit. But Anthony, with your thumbs up, I'd like to transition to our next topic. But thank you, Anthony, and thank you to FBO for all that you do for our community. And we look forward to partnering in whatever capacity there is. But Bike Month being a big one, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think for the sake of time, we're going to skip the crash data that I was going to present on, and we'll pick that up next meeting, just because I really want to give Tyler the space to present. Tyler has put a lot of time into diving into some information that he's been tracking in the public sphere. Tyler's been looking at the comments, the many comments that we're seeing from the public, and trying to get all that data put together in one document to better understand what comments are coming in, what are the frequently asked questions or misunderstandings, and how can we best address that. So Tyler, if you want to introduce this topic and start your presentation, that would be great.
Yeah, no problem. I'm sharing my screen right now. And
yes, we can
you
see it.
Confirm to me you see a cover slide that says transportation reform responding to criticisms?
We can. Perfect.
Okay, great. And my audio is good?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, then let's dive into it. Throughout the 20th century, cities invested in vehicle infrastructure with little consideration for other modes of travel, which resulted in economically excessive amounts of vehicle travel, more traveling than people would choose if they had better options and efficient incentives. Many cities, like Flagstaff, are trying to undo these past mistakes with reforms that support a more efficient mix of transportation modes. These reforms have many potential economic, social, and environmental benefits. But regarding climate change specifically, this is Bike Climate Action Team after all, these reforms are essential to reducing carbon dioxide emissions, as personal vehicle travel is one of the largest sources, responsible for 22% of the United States energy-related emissions. Now, what exactly do I mean by reforms? There's a wild variety of strategies, policies, and programs out there, each with their own jargon. Things like public transit investments, pedestrian and cycling infrastructure improvements, road diets, congestion pricing, parking fees, carbon taxes, complete streets, transit-oriented development, smart growth. All of these are things you may have heard of that would fall under this reform umbrella. These reforms are sometimes politically contentious and spark a lot of conversations at city council, the state legislature, and on social media. As someone who often participates in these conversations, I noticed that these criticisms mostly fall into a few similar buckets. Essentially, the same conversations happen over and over. I started listing these criticisms, combined that with academic research responding to them, and produced the content of this presentation. I'm sorry, did someone say something?
I'm sorry, that was feedback on my end.
Okay. Yeah, the content of this presentation, which is a list of the most common criticisms and how to respond to them. My hope is you'll either find this content personally interesting, or if you're the kind of person compelled to jump into social media arguments, it will help you respond more intelligently to these criticisms. If that's all clear, I'll start with the first one, which states that reductions in vehicle travel will reduce economic productivity. Now, obviously, this is a very academic phrasing of the criticism. When you spot it out in the wild, it's typically phrased a bit spicier. But the logic is that vehicle travel supports goods delivery, commuting to jobs, and access to businesses. Thus, less vehicle travel means less economic activity, leaving everyone worse off. Now, it is true that vehicle travel does those things. It supports goods delivery, commuting to jobs, and access to businesses. However, vehicle travel also imposes significant economic costs from things like traffic congestion, road wear, crashes, and pollution. Walking, biking, and public transit can do the same things as vehicle travel, but typically at much lower costs. Reforms that appropriately balance these costs against the benefits of vehicle travel actually increase the economic productivity of an area. And if that all sounds a bit too theoretical, I have some concrete examples of this. One, less traffic congestion allows commercial vehicles to make more deliveries per day. Second example, reductions in parking spaces frees up more land for housing and businesses. And third example, a compact urban form with walking, cycling, and transit improvements increases access to employees and customers. So it's actually the case that less driving can mean a better economy. And continuing on with this criticism, for all these reasons, research shows businesses tend to be more successful if located in compact multimodal areas where less vehicle travel is needed to deliver goods or attract employees and customers. You can even see this relationship on a state level. States with less vehicle travel per capita actually have higher gross domestic product, GDP, per capita. And this dovetails with comparative research between countries showing that vehicle travel is positively correlated with economic productivity only in low-income countries. In the United States specifically, GDP and vehicle miles traveled actually decoupled around 1995.
Charlie, really quick, do you have any thoughts as to why that is?
It's for all the reasons stated before that. We've got a lot of dense multimodal areas that are able to get access to goods. You're able to get access to customers and employees and you don't need to increase vehicle miles to do so. And this also interacts with a lot of trends that have increased productivity without needing more vehicle miles, like telework. A lot of people are able to do their jobs from home now, which means they don't need to drive to do that job. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons why in high income economies, advanced economies, you don't need to increase vehicle miles of travel to increase economic activity.
Thank you.
Yeah. Moving on to criticism 2, which states that vehicle travel is more efficient than other modes. The funniest phrasing of this criticism I've seen was someone angrily writing, "You expect me to haul my boat to Lake Powell by bike?" The image of which always makes me laugh. No, I do not expect you to haul your boat to Lake Powell by bike. Some trips are clearly more efficient by vehicle. However, not all trips. And the focus of reforms is enabling other transportation modes for trips where they'd be more efficient. For example, if you need to grab a few items from the grocery store for dinner, and you're able to live just a few blocks from a neighborhood grocery store with a continuous pedestrian and cyclist path connecting you, walking or biking is going to be more efficient than driving. And it's also worth noting that some of the perceived efficiency of vehicle travel is an illusion. A vehicle allows faster travel, but that is partially offset by the additional working hours required to own and operate the vehicle. When this time is accounted for, non-vehicle travel is faster than driving for a surprising number of trips, particularly for low-income workers. Criticism 3 states that using road user fees, things like fuel taxes, tolls, and registration fees, to finance non-vehicle transportation is unfair to motorists. When you spot this argument in the wild, it's some version of pedestrians, cyclists, and riders of public transit are freeloaders spending the hard-earned money of motorists. Now, I actually think the structure of this criticism is correct. It is unfair, in a sense, for people to pay for transportation options they don't use. However, when you dig into the data, the criticism gets flipped on its head. Road user fees paid by motorists cover only 47% of what is spent on roads in Arizona. The remaining 53% of costs are covered by general taxes. So motorists pay more total user fees, but they also receive more total subsidies. And that subsidy is regressive because vehicle travel increases with income. In a perfectly fair system where everyone paid only for the transportation they used, most motorists would actually pay more than they currently do. And there are 3 facts related to this criticism I want to mention. First is that pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure is typically cheaper to construct than vehicle infrastructure. It requires less material and land, doesn't need signalized intersections unless interacting with vehicles, and parking for bikes requires much less space. And for maintenance, due to the mathematical relationship between weight and road stress, pedestrians and cyclists generate negligible road wear compared to vehicles. A 220-pound bike and rider would have to cross a section of street 150,000 times to generate the same road stress as a single trip by a 4,400-pound vehicle. And that's, yeah, it's 150,000. I didn't miss a zero there. It's that big of a difference.
Hey, Tyler, I'm going to pause you for 1 second.
Yes.
Lauren, would you like to comment about the link you just shared?
Oh no, it's a joke. There's a boat that turns in, or a bike that turns into a boat. So yeah, I just found I'm laughing because I did look into how to get my kayak down to Lake Mary by my bike. So that whole like get my boat to Lake Powell is just really hilarious. But yeah, Tyler, nice work. All the things are so true.
So I guess the solution there is you ride your bike to Lake Powell and it turns into a boat.
Dapper Dre is with us virtually. Welcome, Dre. Thanks for joining us. Dre writes, bike ped improvements are a waste of taxpayer money. Yeah, these are all points that we hear way too often on social media. And Tyler, I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to really dive into some of these data points. I'll let you keep going.
Yeah.
Hey, can I make a
please.
And I'm sorry, Tyler, I'm not going to be able to cite a source on this, but having worked in the bicycle business for a long time, there was a statistic that I read several years ago that in the United States per capita, bicyclists make a lot more money or make more money than average. And so therefore, by default, end up paying more road taxes and things like that. They also tend to be motor vehicle users and pay all those taxes as well. So that's something that's often, I think it's a fundamental problem in some of these conversations, exactly what you're talking about, that, and I made this comment to some woman on the social media the other day, that in the case of what I was responding to, bicyclists are not a monolithic entity that violate traffic laws uniformly, because we're talking about bicyclists always breaking the laws, right, versus motor vehiclists. So that it's not this idea that bicyclists are necessarily these freeloaders who just ride their bikes everywhere is a non-starter in the United States. It's just not true. Bicyclists are probably paying more taxes than the person complaining about spending their tax money on bike infrastructure.
Yeah.
And Tyler, really quick. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think a few cities have dug into where the that same financial analysis and where the money comes from, and it always ends up with cars are the most subsidized and cost the most money and all that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely, I mean, we could benchmark the entire country, right?
Yeah, that's what I found as well when I was researching this, is the exact amount of the subsidies depends on methodology and varies from study to study. But they universally find that vehicles receive larger subsidies. So that matches with what I found as well.
And Dre writes, have you calculated how much it costs to create 1 mile of car prominent road versus cycling sidewalk?
I don't have that number on the top of my head, but I did go through a couple studies that try and do that. They looked at the typical cost of cycling and pedestrian infrastructure per mile versus equivalent roadways. There's a lot of reasons that can get complicated because you have to take in the throughput and other things. And are you looking at a 4-lane or a 2-lane road? But yeah, there are papers out there that attempt to do that.
That's great.
Science. I just Googled it real quick for a quick and dirty, and Science Daily says that 6 times more expensive for car infrastructure than bicycling. Especially the maintenance too, right? That's what part of your thing, Tyler.
Yeah, the maintenance is negligible for most pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure because the wear and tear is so much less. I think actually wear and tear from weather would be a more prominent factor.
Yeah.
Wear and tear from the weight, the road stress of the travel.
We could have a civil engineer come in and describe the differences between building a road foundation for heavy vehicles versus what are 200-pound bikes, maybe, or like total person.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is all highly entertaining.
Yeah, this is very interesting. All right, Tyler, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so I think I was on the second point. So on the state and federal level, most funding of roadway construction and maintenance happens automatically. It does not need to be approved year to year, and thus it invites less scrutiny. The public notices cyclist and pedestrian infrastructure being voted on every year, but it doesn't notice the larger amounts that are automatically diverted to vehicle infrastructure. And I think this creates this false impression that a lot more money is going to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure comparatively than what the actual situation is. And third point This criticism assumes that spending on non-vehicle transportation is to the detriment of motorists. But that's not always true. For example, reforms that reduce traffic congestion by diverting some trips away from vehicles benefits the remaining motorists. It's not always a zero-sum game between motorists and non-motorists. Criticism 4 is less about data and more about rhetoric. It states that reforms to increase non-vehicle travel amount to a form of social engineering. You'll commonly hear reforms labeled a war on cars. I like to respond to this criticism with a rhetorical Uno reverse. Yes, it is social engineering. Our current policies that reduce non-vehicle travel options and encourage sprawl are a form of social engineering that reduces non-motorists' mobility and freedom. And there's a really good quote I found on this from Mark Halanek, the Washington State Transportation Center director. All transportation planning is social engineering. We've spent 100 years making it easy to drive. We've spent 100 years making it really hard to walk, cycle, or take a bus. So people drive because it makes sense.
That's such a good point, Tyler. And I just want to, double down on that and share that, the other week, both myself and Dre spoke at City Council, and Dre made such a really valid point about induced demand and how induced demand works both ways. You can induce demand for cars and you can induce demand for alternative modes. And it's just a matter of what you want to build and plan for. And so, glad you had this slide in here, and that's a great quote.
Yeah, glad that resonated with you. And the fifth and last criticism I will cover is that reforms are an ineffective waste of money. People will never shift away from vehicle travel. It's just impossible. And the best response to this criticism is to point towards the many examples of successful reforms within the US. I'm not going to read all the entries of this table, but this is just a handful of successful reforms I was able to find through academic research. Waving your hands in the air and declaring this is impossible is not just a failure of imagination, it's a failure to look around and see what's already been done. And outside of the United States, there is an abundance of mid-sized cities with vehicle mode shares in the 20 to 60% range. These cities exist in all climates and geographies, and their very existence implies that vehicle travel could be greatly reduced without deleterious effects. People in these other cities seem to go about their daily lives just fine and seem to enjoy themselves. It's not some apocalyptic wasteland. Yeah, so it's easy to see that this is possible. And yeah, that's all the content I had. A couple acknowledgments. So the bulk of the arguments and aggregated research that I presented here came from the Victoria Transport Policy Institute, an independent research organization dedicated to developing innovative and practical solutions to transportation problems. And also the cover slide image was taken by Kent Canoose and distributed under a Creative Commons license. Yeah, and that's my presentation. Thank you.
That's great. Wow. Bravo. Thank you, Tyler, for putting that together. And that was a wonderful presentation. I see Lauren has added another link to our chat. Lauren, what's this one? I'm afraid to ask.
I'm not sure either. Just a moment.
Oh, you know what? That's the old one. Never mind. That's the old
okay.
one. I don't know why it came up as like new for me. Never mind. Thank you, Tyler. That's really, really good points that you make. Stefan. Well, Stefan, you're muted.
Right. Sorry. Okay. Now I'm back. So
Yes.
it's really important information when we are putting out messages about the BCAT actions, whatever they might be. How do you put together a flyer that can reach folks in some of those resistance camps, resistance thinking? So climate folks often look at data like that about climate and figure out ways to communicate in spite of those barriers or educate on those barriers, as the case may be.
Absolutely. And, I'm going to see if I can pull Anika into this conversation. Anika, if you're still with us, I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about the information that was presented, and also what kind of arguments are you hearing or have you heard in response to, bicycle advocacy amongst your peers, if anything. Anika, are you with us?
Yeah, it was a really cool and interesting and well-researched presentation, so thank you. And I don't know, I haven't really talked about biking much, but yesterday I did look at a bill that was proposed in the Arizona State Legislature that was basically not allowing the Arizona Department of Transportation to accept like federal grant money to build like bike paths. And I was understandably very confused and somewhat distraught that this was something that someone took the time to write because they thought, I don't know what they were trying to do with it, but it just seemed very strange and not helpful to anything in the slightest.
It's a really good point, Anika. And, I think I'll comment to that really quick. I think that there's a status quo that people like and that supports the fossil fuel industry and the car manufacturers. And they don't want to see people get out of their cars. They want to see us continue to drive, and they want to force us to drive. And I hate to say us and them or they and us and whatnot, but there are certain people that don't want alternatives to be supportive because they don't want people to have the choice. Tyler, did you have a comment to that or something you'd like to add?
I was going to add that I'm aware of the bill Anika was referring to, as well as a couple other ones. It is my impression that at the state legislature, a lot of these issues are tied up in culture war conflicts in very strange ways, such that whether people choose to bike or choose to drive gets somehow wrapped up in like red versus blue debates, conservative versus progressive. It's strange, but that's my impression of watching the state legislature, what's going on. It's culture war fodder.
If I could comment on this, one of our big goals throughout our tenure in Northern Arizona is not to allow our conversation about bicycling get co-opted by that conversation. And I know, I'm just going to say some things frankly. I know plenty of Trump voters who ride bicycles. And so to me, there are ways to bridge those gaps. But it's an unfortunate and seemingly ever worsening problem in our country, this idea that if you espouse this particular pursuit or value, then you must, of course, support all these others. And it's from both sides a lot of the times. There's, well, if you support that, then you must be part of that entire monolith of thinking, and the same from the other side. And so with some of the culture war stuff like that, I think with bicycling in particular, there's one sort of piece of kryptonite that you can throw into that. When I grew up, you could ride your bicycle anywhere as a little kid. And you can't do that in a lot of places in Flagstaff at this point. It's just too dangerous and because the infrastructure doesn't exist and people are distracted. They're on their phones texting. And I was joking with Adam the other day. I have one of my vehicles is a big truck. I have a Toyota Tundra. And I was telling him how the from my perspective, the good thing about the separated bike lanes on Butler now is that I have to pay attention when I'm driving my Tundra on that road. And I joked with them, I said, there's got to be people upset that they can't text and drive. And so to pull people away from that kind of thinking, to think about when you were a kid, especially because a lot of these folks are from a generation where they could ride their bikes when they were kids safely around the neighborhood and down to the store and whatever else. So there's opportunities to take that legislator, that idiot with the state senator who wrote that legislation, and basically turn it into, so you hate kids and you want to see kids get killed, and throw that back at him and say, why are you making this a culture war issue? Why don't you want your kids to be able to ride bikes safely to church? And not get on their bus a little bit, to quote Ken Kesey. So yeah, it's something to consider is what value set could block that cultural problem, the culture war paradigm. Because bicycling isn't strictly for, climate advocates and hippies, it's for everybody.
It looks like you're talking, Adam, but we can't hear you.
Hear me now? Okay, great. Sorry, my camera battery has run out. But basically what I was going to say is, in studying, I think it was what Denmark did, it might have been in Amsterdam, back in the 70s, they used to have the same car issues we have and that we're facing as, communities across the states now. And what it took to overturn that and overcome that, kind of to go into Anika's point, is that, it was the kids, and there were too many kids getting hit by cars and dying on their ways to school and whatnot. And so parents with kids took it to the streets and they protested and they advocated that there were safe ways for kids to move freely, as Anthony spoke to. And so that's ultimately what changed the narrative in wherever it was in Europe. And I think that's important because I think kids' freedom impacts all of us, and we should definitely have a discussion where we really dive into this, perhaps at a future date. That's a really big topic, and Anika, we can maybe even really engage your peers and your friends and other schools as well in this conversation and trying to empower schools to create programs that allow kids to get to school safely. I know that's a big, value at the city level as well, but yet you don't see much priority being placed at all, like almost zero. And it's really unfortunate. But over the years, the planning documents speak to safety of kids getting to and from school. Other questions and comments for Tyler on Tyler's report? Please jump in because I want to keep us moving along. So Tyler, looking ahead at what's next, we'll have to figure out how to continue this conversation and perhaps even, like we've talked about, take some of those points and put them into educational outreach material, perhaps graphics, etc., and figure out ways to communicate these points so that our community is more educated and informed. I love that Flagstaff at large is talking about these topics, even though the conversation can get out of hand pretty quick at times. I think it's great that people are talking, and that's half the battle. So now it's a matter of communicating information and moving forward as best as we can. Tyler, any closing comments on your research or what's next?
Yeah, there are a few arguments or a few criticisms I'd like to add to this. But I think the next big thing would be condensing this down to an infographic, which I've taken a crack at, but apparently I'm really bad at converting academic arguments into catchphrases. So yeah, I'd be happy to collaborate with someone on that, some way to turn this into a flyer, infographic, just something that can be easily passed around.
Great. That's great. Thank you. And so we'll pick this back up in meetings to come, perhaps after the budget retreat, and we'll continue to dive into this. I'm also talking to folks about trying to create outreach, video work to communicate some of these types of points and some of the things that we're working towards. But thank you for the presentation, Tyler. That was excellent. Really impressive presentation, and thank you for putting the time in. We appreciate it. The other topic I wanted to talk about is the upcoming events that we're working towards. And I just put it in the chat. It's also in the description to this live stream. And sorry, the comment chat is not very clear, but basically we have a budget retreat coming up at the end, April 7th. That's the last thing we're working towards, is this budget retreat. And that's a big deal. It's a capital budget retreat, and we have the opportunity to advocate for additional funding to go towards different key projects at the city that the city's been working towards, with Martin's help at the multimodal level and his work. And then also some additional positions to support Martin. And so it's not just on one person at the city. And so April 7th, the last thing on this comment you'll see is the capital budget retreat. And so we're hoping to get people to email council and show up at the council meeting prior to this retreat, and even show up at the retreat if they're able to, and provide public comments and help support the council in advocating for these projects and these additional positions. And I think we'll be successful. I really do. And so that's the thing that we're working towards. So now they go backwards from April 7th. April 5th is that Wednesday, and we're hosting a bike strike. And we're really excited about that bike strike. And we're going to start at Heritage Square, and we're going to ride to the project locations that we're going to be advocating for funding for, and dive into the design, dive into what the project is, and discuss the project with those in attendance. And we're going to also have guest speakers. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be music. Really hoping to make a big splash with that bike ride on Wednesday, the 5th, leading into that budget retreat on the 7th. Again, all this is building up to that. The April 4th date is the council meeting, and that's a Tuesday. And the April 4th council meeting, we're hoping to bring people to City Hall and bring people in to give public comments, and also email council about supporting funding for the projects and also for the key positions. And so that's April 4th. And then the last thing on this list is next Wednesday. The next Bike Cap meeting is next Wednesday. That's our last meeting leading into this big week of events, of which we have 3 events listed. And so next Wednesday, this group will be convening again, and we'll be doing it live like this again, 5 to 6, maybe 5 to 6:30. Maybe we should just go ahead and accept that reality. It's more than an hour that we'll likely need. And I'm thinking for next week's meeting, and I'm curious what other people think, I want to see us focus on 2 topics. One being the key things we're advocating funding for. So those 3 projects and those positions. So we can really take time to dive into that, along with the crash data. I think we can partner the 2. And that the 2 of the 3 projects we're advocating for funding for are protected intersections at 2 of our more dangerous intersections in Flagstaff. So we'll be diving into protected intersections and what that means, what that design look like. So we'll be educating the public on that and those who don't know. And then diving into the crash data. So that's our list of 4 upcoming events. Who's got comments or questions? Stefan, did you have something you'd like to add? Yeah.
Well, so I know we're going to put the word out on all of these things through NASCA's network of sharing information, but I'm hoping that the Flagstaff Biking Organization is willing to jump in, and a bike strike is better if you have lots of folks.
And I know that's
we need all the help getting the word out.
Yes, and I know Anthony and I have talked about this a little bit. And Anthony, if you're still with us, you're welcome to chime in. But I think that FBO is generally supportive of most of these events. I think with the bike strike, it gets a little bit complicated because of liability. But Anthony, I'll let you speak to that.
So if we're going to be listed as a sponsor of the event in any publicity, then we need to be named as additionally insured, essentially indemnified by your organization. But we can share your social media posts on the event saying these guys are putting on an event. So with something called a bike strike, we have some other concerns about potential for things to go sideways, although they probably won't. But we would support it by sharing the information about it through our social media channels and stuff. But what we would be sharing is these guys are doing this. This is what it's comprised of. Go ride with them. So
and a quick follow up to add to that really quick. I think Anthony, FBO would be in favor of supporting a letter to the city council leading into the budget retreat, advocating for these projects and the funding for the positions. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably send our own letter on that front,
right,
like we do. So yeah, we'll definitely be doing that. Yeah, that's right up our alley. So,
Stefan, does that help give clarity? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it does, and it reminds me of the conversation that you and I had, Anthony, a couple of years ago when we were planning our first bike strike. We had that same exact exchange, and so there was a question about NASCA's insurance and how much we had coverage and whether we could cover FBO as
we
well.
just need to be basically indemnified that it's and held harmless. We're signing on because we support this sort of thing, but we're not organizing or running the event. And I'm currently, I'm not going to get in the weeds here, but I'm currently a witness in a lawsuit, not through FBO, but through my former employer, for an event that I helped put on because the guy wasn't looking where he was going, and he rode into a cattle guard and crashed, and somehow everybody else has to pay his medical bills. So it's no fun. So I want to minimize my exposure to having to give depositions is what it comes down to.
Anika, I'm curious.
We're happy for that kind of coverage. If you guys don't want your name officially part of it, we would rather have it, but we understand.
No, we're fine to have it. We would just need to have an agreement and a additional insured certificate from your insurance company. So yeah, basically you hold us harmless and indemnify us. But we can promote it. We can promote your event. That's well within our purview of things we do.
Well, and we have, since you and I had that conversation back then, for the bike strike that didn't happen, because Dapper Dre and others were hit by the big truck in one of our dangerous intersections.
I remember that. Just to be clear there's a difference between the two things, right? There's us having our logo on your flyer or your media stuff, and there's us sharing your event, and those are two different things. We can do the latter. We can't do the former without insurance and paperwork. So yeah.
Yeah, I understand fully. And since that conversation 2 years ago, we have done some certificates, so we know how to do them now. And
okay, cool.
I can bring it to the board, and we can have that discussion, and perhaps we could do such a certificate. You guys probably would want some specific language. So towards that end, if you could send me the kind of language what you would want it to say, then we could run that by our insurance agent.
Yeah, I'll see if our insurance guy has some boilerplate on that. There are different kinds of certificates too, I've learned recently, which is there's one that tells me you have insurance. There's one that says your insurance is covering me. That's the one we want. And yeah. I didn't know that until this lawsuit that I'm part of. So anyway.
Okay, so I just want to mention that I just sent an email to the two of you in case you didn't have each other's emails. Maybe we can take the conversation offline about the insurance moving forward, just to save time for all of us. But that's great, and I really appreciate all the partnership and collaboration. Stefan, did you have more you'd like to add at all, or?
No,
Okay.
I think that's all very clear, and so we're happy that you guys will get the word out to folks, and then hopefully we can arrange it in such a way that you guys can be officially part of the celebration.
Love it. That's great. Lauren, Tyler, or Anika, any thoughts about the list of upcoming events, how to build momentum, how to get more people to show up and engage, or anything regarding what we have listed in the next 2 weeks?
Well, I know from my old days of war, like if we want to post some info, like posters at bike racks, that usually got folks like, hey, reminder on this Tuesday, you're all obviously a biker because you're at the bike rack. Yeah, I
That's
think we
interesting.
could, right, like trying to get the folks that we know bike and are kind of committed to it, and then kind of along that same line of identifying that this is impactful and it's not just fluff, kind of like the signing up for the bike to work month, but kind of emphasizing that this does influence, or maybe it also has a link to that draft of a letter that they could send to council. And I don't, since this is my first one, I don't know if this is like a working meeting or, but I really enjoy helping write that letter or being involved,
Oh,
because
that's
I
great.
think I'm really energized about just being part of a group again would be really nice.
Yeah.
I've
So
been
this is
yeah. Oh, I was work from home for quite a while on a single project, and then I recently quit. So I'm looking for. It's really nice to talk with folks that are passionate about biking and data crunching and benchmarking, and this is my jam.
Oh, that's great. And Stefan, I see you, and I'll go to you in a quick second here. I'll just let you know, Lauren, this is a working group. We're also outward facing as we're working inwardly at the same time, just to let the public engage with us and see what we're doing, and also to build momentum. But yeah, we will be meeting regularly moving forward. We don't really have a strict time schedule for our meetings yet, but we're kind of meeting on a need to meet basis. And we'll reevaluate depending, on how things go and figure that out. But yeah, it'd be great to have your engagement. And Stefan, go ahead.
Well, as you were talking, Lauren, you just lit it to my brain that maybe a press release in advance of the event. And if we can get coverage in the Daily Sun prior to the event, that's going to bring out a lot of folks. So
that's a great point.
I don't know if you've ever done press releases or would want to do something like that. There are some NASCA volunteers who have volunteered to write press releases, and maybe we could connect you with them. I don't know. Does any
That
of
would be great. I've never done, so my background is as a mechanical engineer, so I'm not a communications person, but I can come up with ideas, and that data is really exciting, and I think I'm yeah, part of my recent internet hole is researching like change management, so especially that emotional component of something is different, and usually the initial reaction is fear, and so trying to manage that, because if we can get this information out in a way that people don't become defensive and they can absorb, like they can internalize and go, this is a good idea, I think that would be really really great. So that's part of the whole marketing industry, right, is to get inside people's heads. But as you said, that on Route 66 for the radio station, they have that billboard that sometimes they put announcements on.
Oh, you're thinking of, is it CAF?
Yeah. I don't know. That's another marketing aspect.
Gosh, I don't know if they'd pick this up, but they might.
I know.
I was surprised several years ago they picked up one of our shoe strikes, and they had me on talking on CAF Country. about the upcoming shoe strike. What's a shoe strike? Why are we doing this? All the whole thing.
I'll reach out to them. I think that's a good point. I definitely have contacts at CAF, and I can see if they'll have, let's say, myself on, maybe even someone else, but keeping it simple to one of us. I can go on potentially and speak about the bike strike in the week of events to try to get the word out. And then I love the idea of a press release to send out to the Daily Sun and such. And I could work on that as well, unless someone else wants to. But Lauren, we definitely need to engage you as however we can. So maybe I think we have everyone's contact information. What we'll do is maybe I'll draft a letter and then I'll send it to this group. And then if anyone wants to make edits or comments, we could do that before we use it. But that's great.
Nice.
So just so you know, and you may know these people, but Jill Seville is kind of the station. She's a manager at some level, and so she was involved in having me on. And then I was actually on Peter Bruce's show, and he was the guy who interviewed me.
He's retired, and I know his replacement. So yeah, I'm right there with you. That's great. Lauren, did you have anything else you'd like to add?
Brainstorming. What about or the Flagstaff local NPR?
Ooh, yeah.
Or even on campus, so college kids have extra time in between classes and homework, right?
Oh my gosh.
There's a NAU contact or the bike. I mean, I'm just thinking about where to connect with bicyclists and bike racks all over campus and at the student housing places, and there's got to be some passionate students.
Lauren, if we were able to create some kind of small flyer, would you be able to help us get the flyer out there?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Bike around, right?
Yeah. That would be great. And so, Stefan, I think going back to your comments to me weeks ago about a flyer, I think Daniel and I are we're working on a flyer currently, but maybe we'll create it, we'll print some, and we'll get some to you. And then you can help us get the word out that way too.
And if
exciting.
If you have room for a fly on the wall, I'd be excited just to hear conversations that go on any
NAU.
Yeah, or just creating flyers, or I just it's interesting. I like to learn through experience, I guess. So if anyone wants a buddy, I'm happy to be a buddy or just somebody. Yeah,
Lauren, you're in. You are so in. Don't you worry. You got plenty of buddies here, and we will definitely be grateful for your support and look forward to working with you. That's wonderful. Anika, are you still with us? And assuming you are, I'm curious what your thoughts are on these upcoming events and how we can maybe build momentum and get more of your peers involved.
Yeah, I'm still here. And I know I can easily share these upcoming events with Fall's Environmental Coalition and Flagstaff Youth Climate Alliance, and part of Flagstaff Youth Climate Alliance are a few people from Flag High, and they can share it with Flag High's Environmental Coalition. I could also try and see if anyone else has connections with Fossil Free NAU or NAU Green Jacks to try and share things. And a flyer would be very helpful to share that information.
Okay. So I need to get on finishing the flyer and bringing you into the fold, Lauren, as much as we can. And then also working on a press release that I'll run by all of you. And hopefully we can get that done ideally by the end of this week, because we're starting to get up against the clock, and I want to make sure that all these outlets have the time that they need to help us get the word out. But Nika, that'd be great if you could help share these things with your networks and all those groups you mentioned. And I think a flyer, we need to have potentially even a flyer with the press release to send together to groups, I think would be ideal. So thank you for all that added work. Looking forward to doing that. But in all seriousness, this is really exciting. Anika, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Very good. Great.
Anika, you're talking about Madeline Trilling, who
Yes.
is in the, yeah, okay. So she has recently gotten on the NASCAR rosters and is being invited to lots of things. Hopefully she will get involved. I don't know. Do you know how strong the environmental group is at Flag High?
It's actually only started pretty recently, but there's a recent climate strike and they organized that, and they also worked on getting recycling at Flag High because apparently they didn't have that. So I'd say they're doing pretty well.
Very good.
Great, thank you. And Tyler, I'm gonna let you take us home. And folks who are tuning in, I know there's 3 of you watching currently. If anyone has any comments or thoughts about our upcoming events or anything else to add to the conversation, please put that in the comments section. But Tyler, did you have anything that you'd like to add to the conversation about what we have planned?
I'll definitely be there. And I am curious what crash data you have, although maybe you want to save that, because at the beginning of this year, I communicated with the city on when they were going to update their crash data, and the impression I got from them was that they had not yet. So yeah, I'm curious how recent the crash data you have is.
It's probably the same data that you've seen. It's both within the ATMP, the Active Transportation Master Plan document, and then I believe there's a standalone 2019 report that I'd like to dig up to present on as well. And yeah, there's definitely so much I want to dive into on that topic, but I'm going to save that for next meeting. But yeah, I agree with you, Tyler. They're supposed to do that annually, I believe, is in the policy or whatever it is, the guidance, but they're definitely not doing that annually at the city, and that's unfortunate, right? So I think our data, I believe, is from 2019. Yeah, Lauren.
Has anyone contacted the Arizona Bike Law guy? He does a yearly, he's mostly centered around Phoenix, but I think he did a statewide, I don't know, he seems really good at mining that data and kind of gives updates on court cases and stuff. So it seems like he's keeping active crash collision instances. I don't know, maybe he might have an insight on how we can mine the data ourselves. It seems like he knows where the source data is or something.
Do you know how to get a hold of this person?
His website. Yeah. I've emailed him before. He's very friendly.
Maybe if you don't mind, send him an email and ask him if he has any information he can share with us about Flagstaff's crash data. And we could try to include that. But that'd be great if you wanted to take that on, Lauren.
Got it.
Awesome. Yeah, and Tyler, have you dived into the crash data? I think you have.
The 2019 data, yes. I've sent emails to City Council with my impressions of the data.
Tyler, would you want to generate a couple slides on some of the data findings that you've seen?
It may would it not overlap with what you intend to present? I'm assuming you would be walking through the same things that I would walk through, like, highlighting the most dangerous locations and types of crashes.
I do plan to do that.
Yeah.
I would plan to do that, but just seeing how well you presented earlier, I would not present as well as you did. I'll tell you that right now. And so, yeah, we can talk more about this offline. Maybe we can tag team it even. But yeah, I was planning just to kind of share the documents and kind of scroll through it with folks and highlight certain areas for everybody. But we can talk more about that. And then Tyler, anything else in regards to the upcoming 4 events?
I'm good. Okay. I'll definitely be there. So yeah, look forward to it.
Folks, I want to let you go. Stefan, any other closing comments from yourself?
I think this is wonderful. A team is coming together and the plans are good.
Yeah, great. And for folks who are tuning in again, if you'd like to join us on this side of the screen, you're welcome to. And I will create a event for the next week's meeting, perhaps tomorrow on Facebook. And it's also on the NASCA website under their event calendar. So you can go and register an RSVP for that event and get the link to this meeting so that you can join us on this side next time if you'd like. But Anthony, any closing comments from you on our upcoming events or anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, just that we'll need to talk about what FBO's involvement can be with that bike strike, but we'll be writing a letter certainly in support of the same things on the budget for the budget retreat. Incidentally, I think I could be wrong, but Ed, who you will meet at the bike summit, is the same Ed who runs AZ Bike Law. I think.
Oh,
Nice.
I'm not positive. So I think it's, I don't know how to say his last name, but like Beige or BG or something like that.
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah. Okay. So that I've met him, and he's the one who also is has something to do with running the Coalition of Arizona Bicyclists. So you will meet him soon, Adam.
that's great. And what Anthony is speaking about is this bike summit, the annual bike summit that's happening next Friday, a week from this Friday. And I'm very excited about being down there and being part of a panel. And I'll be live streaming a lot of it so that you all can watch it from home as well. But great. Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate all the collaboration and support from FBO. It's wonderful. Folks, we're coming up on 2 hours. I really want to let you get back to your days. I think moving forward, we're going to say that we're going to aim for an hour and a half, but so appreciate you engaging with us and sticking on this call with us for this entire time. We're going to keep working and we're going to keep chugging along. But thank you all so much for engaging and being part of this conversation. And we'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Be safe and yeah, talk to you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Cheers.